Now we move on to the next two raw materials. One is light and the last one is chloroplast. Now talking about the light, you know the sunlight that is incident on earth, it has different wavelengths inside it. We have entire electromagnetic spectrum in the sunlight. Now this again is from your knowledge of chemistry and physics, where you study the various wavelengths into which the white light or the sunlight is divided. What we are concerned about in the photosynthesis is this part of the light. This part of the electromagnetic spectrum. If we go in terms of wavelength, I am talking over here. If we go to this side, we have infrared radiation, and they go as much as 2700 nanometers in terms of wavelength, and the ones which from 300 to 390 nanometers, they are UV rays, that is ultraviolet rays, infrared rays, and our area or our zone of concern is VIBGYOR, which ranges between 390 nanometer to 760 nanometer. Now this is the region of the sunlight that the plant is going to utilize and take its energy that is present in the form of photons and then do the process of photosynthesis, that is fix that energy in terms of chemical bonds. So we have the part of light which acts as the raw material for the process of photosynthesis. Now this 390 nanometer to 760 nanometer, talking about a term known as PAR. Inside this also we have a thing known as PAR, that is photosynthetically active radiation. This term is to be remembered, that what is the range of PAR, that is photosynthetically active radiation, that ranges between 400 nanometer, I'll write it over here, 400 nanometer to 700 nanometer. That is PAR. You have to remember this. This part of white light VIBGYOR spectrum is used as much as 400 to 700 nanometer. Now what you have to remember, one more thing you have to remember, that you know your knowledge from electromagnetic spectrum should be stern enough by at this stage, that as the wavelength increases, the energy of the light decreases. So the light which would be at this stage would have the highest, this value of wavelength will have the highest energy, and that will be present over here, will have a lower energy, relatively lower energy. So basically this part of the spectrum will have higher energy and this part will have lower energy, but the wavelength would be greater, of course. So we have violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange and red. This is the expansion of this term VIBGYOR. The photosynthetically active radiation ranges between 400 to 700. Now this visible spectrum is 390 to 760 nanometer. It has been observed that as the energy is higher at this end, the rate of photosynthesis is also higher at this end. And another end, that is the red part, that also plays an important role. We will come to know how it does. The red part of the spectrum has an important role in photosynthesis, but comparatively the rate of photosynthesis is not as high as in the case of this particular wavelength where the energy is higher. So you have to keep in mind that the radiations with a wavelength 390 to 470 nanometers have the highest rate of photosynthesis. Then we have 660 to 700 nanometer, which corresponds to the red part, that also has a higher photosynthetic potential, okay, in terms of giving the energy. So this is the red part, this is violet and blue part. So we have these two regions, and as we had talked about this particular region, that is 760, at times beyond 700 to 760 nanometer of wavelength is termed as far red radiation. Okay, at times this far red radiation could also be used by certain cells of the plant or certain pigments. So we have this much range of photosynthetically active radiation. In that photosynthetically active radiation, we have to keep in mind where the energy is higher and where it is lesser, and which has the crucial part. For that we have action spectrum and absorption spectrum, which is covered in a different lesson. For now, you have to remember that this part of the sunlight, white light, in the electromagnetic spectrum has an important role in photosynthesis. The most important role is played by photosynthetically active radiation, and it is believed, or it is there, that inside the white light there are packets of energy that is known as photons. Okay. That is the quantitative term, and the energy inside it is measured in terms of quantums. So this is also to be remembered, that you can brush up from your knowledge of chemistry. I need not to bring in chemistry over here. As much as required for understanding the biology, that would be taken care of, but this part you can tally with your knowledge from chemistry. And lastly, we have the chloroplast, that is a cell organelle, that is a semi-autonomous cell organelle which is present inside the plant cells. Basically, it is a green plastid. You have to remember this. Okay, it is a green plastid that is found in the plants. It has a double membranous structure. So this is all about the raw materials. Why I am not discussing chloroplast in length? Because next lessons would be dedicated to understanding the ultrastructure of chloroplast that you have to deal with. So this is all about the raw materials involved in photosynthesis.